Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 351 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. The brambles are in full flower and the nectar is flowing. I always get a little more excited at this time of the year as it's probably my favourite tasting honey. Supers are on to grab a crop while it lasts, but my attention is now turning to the main event, and that's the Borage pollination for us. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. This week's podcast is brought to you, in part, by Hive 5 Multi-Guard. So,
when you need a little peace of mind that your bees are safe from dangers of all kind, pesticides, hornets, wasps and mice are no match for Hive 5. The Hive 5 Multi-Guard is the best one in town. Keeps your bees safe all year round. The ultimate solution has been found. It's Hive 5.
The Hive 5 Multi-Guard fits nearly all beehives and makes beekeeping much easier. Hive 5.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my weekly beekeeping podcast, number 351. Did anyone else have the most tremendous thunderstorms the other night? That's Friday night into Saturday morning. One moment it was a gentle rumble, and the next torrential rain and almost continuous thunder and lightning for several minutes. It rained so hard that the water coming off the roof of my house was overflowing the guttering and splashing against the bedroom window. In the morning, blue skies, warm sunshine, and no doubt it dries out very, very quickly at this time of the year. I do wonder how the honeybees cope with such torrential rain slamming against the hive. It must be incredibly noisy. Obviously, as long as they're on a stable stand or base of some kind, they should come to no harm. But roofs do blow off, and it would be prudent for me to have a drive around and just check in on our colonies over the next day or two. Working around the apiaries over the last week has been really interesting. As usual, we have a mixed bag, and I was particularly interested in seeing how the nucleus colonies were building. I know that for a lot of us, it seems newly emerged queens seem to take an eternity to start laying eggs, but this last week my patience has been rewarded, and a large number of our own nucleus colonies have now shown that they have a laying queen in place. Once these new queens start to lay eggs, there's really no stopping them at this time of the year. If they're healthy and physically intact after the trauma of mating, most queens get started with laying eggs quite quickly, and as long as they have bees in plenty within the hive, egg production hits full speed pretty quickly. Of course, we are fast approaching the 21st of June, the longest day of the year for us, and a change in what is happening within the hive. Unbelievably almost, is the gradual reduction in egg laying and the overall colony size. It sounds crazy, but I guess it's pretty much imperceptible to start with. But within a month, we'll be looking at a smaller brood nest area, and for most of us, our thoughts will turn to treatments and feeding the bees in the months ahead. Our active beekeeping season always seems so short, so let's make the most of it right now while we can. And don't forget, it's a time to enjoy our honeybees too. Sometimes it can be difficult trying to enjoy the experience, especially when it's 25 degrees plus and you're stuck in a bee suit all day. Hydrate. Remember to drink plenty, even if you're just out on an association bee safari. Keep those fluid levels topped up. Thinking back to my week in the apiary, it occurred to me that we're at the point in the year where some colonies won't need many more weekly inspections, especially those heading to the Borage to help pollinate crops. Sometimes less is more, and if you don't have a reason to inspect, you could spend a quiet 30 or 40 minutes just watching your bees. After all, for most beekeepers, it is a hobby, so why not? My thoughts on the borage pollination are a little bit altered this year. I'm setting them up so that I don't need to inspect them for a full fortnight early in July. The reason for this is that I'm heading over to the USA to visit my youngest daughter and son-in-law as they've just bought their first house, and we're all really excited for them. They, of course, are very keen to show it off, and I really can't wait to visit. Obviously, in the back of my mind, there's a little voice telling me that I shouldn't be taking summer holidays because there's so much work to be done. And it's true. Just because some colonies don't need my attention doesn't mean they're all okay. And of course, there's the honey room to get set up for what I hope will be a lovely summer crop of honey to extract. Honestly, the honey room will take care of itself, as there's not that much to do. But I do like to get everything cleaned down and in its place and have a kind of dry run before we bring back any honey for extraction. I'm trying out Ross rounds on the borage for the first time this year, not something I've ever really thought about doing. Last year was the highly successful section racks. We did so well with those. My thanks to Thorn Beehives for supplying a rack and sections for us to demonstrate how to use them. And of course there's a video on Patreon for you to check out. It took, amazingly, just 3 weeks for the bees to draw out the foundation squares and fill them full of honey. So I'm crossing my fingers in the hope we have a similar result with the Ross rounds. The crucial part here, and this applies to sections, Ross rounds, cut comb, and in fact any honey production, you really need lots and lots of healthy bees to produce a great crop of summer honey. Now I know that seems obvious, but people do try to push their bees a little too far sometimes. It takes a lot of work for them to draw out foundation into comb and then fill it with honey before capping it securely. So don't expect a half-full box of sickly bees to do anything at all. Check for varroa, look at the larvae, take a close look at the adult bees. Ask yourself, is everything okay with my colony? If you've checked their health and you're happy, what about space for the queen to lay eggs into? Now is a good time to pull a couple of frames of food out of the brood box and give them some foundation. You will almost certainly find these frames of food in the outermost frames. In my Langstroth hives, that's frames number 1 and 10. If you have just honey in frames 1, 2, 9 and 10, then I would suggest you're almost certainly restricting the number of eggs the queen can lay right now. Remember, if she lays eggs today, it's going to be 3 weeks before they emerge. Right now, that's into the 2nd week of July. Not too late, but almost. That extra laying space will also help with swarm management, and if you have a young queen, may well see her laying strongly into the latter part of the summer and into the autumn. This gives your colony the very best colony strength heading into the latter part of the year and through into next year. Always, always think about preparing your bees for next year. I know it seems absurd, but it will soon come around and you'll be left wondering where all the time went and if it's too late to do anything with your bees. And then it may well be. Thinking back to the thunderstorms of last night, the huge amount of rain that fell will give a nice boost to soil moisture and, with a little luck, provide enough of a drink for those forage plants that our bees depend on. Those plants maybe will offer up a little extra nectar by way of enticement for our bees to go over and pollinate them, and obviously get that reward. With this in mind, make sure you have supers on now and check them for space as we go forward into the summer nectar flow. As we approach the latter part of that flow, be sure to slow down adding supers to encourage the bees to cap everything. Simply adding more supers because there's still a bit of a flow on could result in a lot of cells partially filled with honey and just more frames to have to extract. Thinking back to the week's inspections, we once again had to tackle our grumpiest colony. They've delivered 4 supers of honey so far. That's Langstroth medium boxes, so not too bad, and they're earmarked for a trip to the Borage. It was a standard weekly inspection, but boy do they jump for my veil each time I inspect. No, they're really not a pleasure to inspect. They're a local mongrel colony, and when you compare them with the queens we get from Northumberland honey, they really are quite a handful. I was toying with the idea of shooting a video with them, for no other reason than to show you all what I mean by grumpy bees. The trouble is, they attack the camera. Maybe we'll do it just for fun and get the camera wrapped up to prevent stings getting stuck into the grip material of the camera. Actually, they've not yet stung me. I know I've just tempted fate, and it will happen eventually, but it's not the kind of colony I would ever attempt to go near without my full bee suit on and veil zipped up. The supers on this colony are getting filled up again, which means I'll probably need Steph to help me lift them off, or at least lift them back on. We do need to get a clearer board on them and prepare them for their trip to the Borage, so it's got to be done soon. Once they come back from the Borage, I might get rid of that queen and split them into nukes. Hopefully by then I'll have some home-produced laying queens from our John Harding method, of which I have an update for you. It's all looking okay, surprisingly. It has taken some time, but I think I have enough bees now, and brood, in each of the outside nuke setups to get nurse bees into that middle nuke box and develop queen cells and look after them adequately. I placed the Nico cup kit block into the selected brood box. Actually, this was the nuke on the left-hand side as I stand behind it, and just to explain, that block is attached to a brood frame. The space around the block has been filled up by the bees, and actually it's all drone brood. Some people like to stop the bees from doing anything in this space, but actually I quite like to use the drone brood as a mechanical varroa control. I do this by waiting for the drone brood sections to be fully capped over and then simply cut it out and remove it. Any varroa that are inside are removed at the same time, thus reducing the population of said varroa. The queen was put into that block on Thursday. There's a video on my Patreon page if you haven't yet seen it. It's again a simple process. I popped back on Friday afternoon, that's a day and a bit after insertion, and the queen has actually laid eggs in a large number of cells. So I pulled the plug out of the top of the cup kit block and released her. At least I gave her the opportunity of escaping out of the block. Hopefully she's found her way out and the workers in there will be taking care of these eggs, and by next inspection, which is tomorrow, Monday, they will hopefully be very young larvae and will have been provisioned with an initial amount of royal jelly. The plan after that is to remove the cells into their Nico blocks, also attached to a frame, and insert these into the middle nuke box, where they will, hopefully, be developed into queen cells. Fast forward to day 8 and we should have sealed queen cells. That then gives me around 6 or 7 days to sort out some queenless mating nukes for these queens to emerge into, get out and mate, and hopefully return to start laying shortly after. Now the timing is going to be critical here because, as I mentioned, I'm going away for a couple of weeks. If my calculations are correct, I can get these queen cells into mating nukes and allow them to emerge. Then probably just check to make sure that the queens have emerged just before I go away, and if everything else works out, the mating and returning to the mating box, by the time I get back, I may have some laying queens to look at. Fingers crossed for that one. And finally this week, I've had a number of emails and questions relating to finding the queen in the supers and what the heck to do when you discover it. Well, first off, it's an absolute pain. I've been there myself. I'm sure many very experienced beekeepers have found themselves in exactly the same situation, and we all curse our luck when we find it. First off, how does she get up there? Well, for most of us, we're using a queen excluder, so she shouldn't be able to get up there, right? Well, sometimes when we're working fast or not paying attention, we can inadvertently get the queen on the queen excluder, and if you lean that against your supers while you're inspecting, or if you put it back onto the bees upside down, it's actually pretty simple to get the queen up into the supers. Another way she gets up there is through the queen excluder. Sometimes, particularly with wire excluders, the wires can get moved out of shape by our hive tool, maybe when we're scraping off excess wax and propolis, and it catches on the wire and makes a small gap, but just big enough that she can get through. It happens. All I know is most of the time, when it happens to me, I discover it by finding no eggs or young larvae in the brood box and immediately jump to the conclusion that they've swarmed. Incorrectly, as it turns out. The inspection continues, frame by frame, no eggs or young larvae, and I get more convinced that they've swarmed. Then the penny drops and I remind myself that I've not seen any queen cells. No queen cells means they have a queen, so what's going on? Finally, my brain gets working and I check the supers, and sure enough, fully loaded with brood in all stages and cell upon cell loaded with eggs, the queen is stuck in the supers. It's okay though, all we need to do is to find her. Easier said than done, right? If I can't find her, and I don't take too much time over this to be honest, I'm very, very busy and I don't have the time to just search through endless frames trying to find the queen. So what I'll do is grab another empty super box, no frames in it, you understand, and put this on top of the brood box. Then I'll grab another super, this one is empty of frames too, and I keep this to one side. Next, one by one, I'll remove the frames, eggs and larvae, have a quick look for the queen. If I don't see her, I'll shake all the bees off the frame into that empty super. Oh, and remember to keep the queen excluder off the brood box at this point. Frame by frame, I'll work my way through, checking and shaking, and if I find her, I'll just chase her back into the brood box and stop shaking bees off frames. If I don't find her, I keep shaking the bees off the frames until I've emptied the box. The beeless frames going into the empty super at my side that I brought over for just this job. I'll also brush bees off the side walls of the supers to make certain the queen isn't stuck on there. Once complete, the queen excluder goes back on beneath the supers. The supers are on top of that excluder, but of course I've checked that excluder to make sure that there isn't any wide gap that the queen can get back through. Nurse bees will quickly move back up into the super to look after the brood, which will emerge in due course. Checking a week later, I'll just make sure that the queen is in fact back in the brood box, and honestly everything should be back to normal. Once the brood emerges as adult bees, without the queen to lay more eggs into those cells, the workers will fill them with honey. Now I've had a conversation regarding this and the fact that larvae defecate into the cells and that you shouldn't use the honey. Well, I guess it's horses for courses. Actually, what probably happens is that the adult bees, once those larvae have emerged as adult bees, the adult bees go into those cells and clean them, making them spotless, ready for the queen to lay eggs in again. And actually, when the bees discover that the queen's not laying eggs, they then start to fill it back up with honey. So I don't actually think that there is anything in the cells when they start to fill it back with honey. But of course, we all are able to make a choice as to what we do with that honey. Whether you use it, extract it, whether you don't, it's perfectly fine whichever way you go. So just don't fret over it and do what you think. If you do extract it, I would finally cut out the comb, clean the frames and start over with clean foundation, just because the fact that there has been brood in those cells seems to encourage all manner of pests such as wax moth and mice, to name but two, into those frames, and then you find that the frames just become unusable anyway. So check for your queens, make sure that she's in the brood box, and enjoy that summer nectar flow. Well, that's it for this week. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,600 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible. No waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2025 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey that will help you improve your beekeeping. Head over to Google and search for Patreon and the Norfolk Honey Company.